What's up? Welcome back. We're building clearbnb, which is a vacation rental marketplace. We're using Ruby on Rails, and in this episode, we're going to use Tailwind CSS to build out our reservations list view so that we can ultimately kind of just like see what upcoming reservations we have that we're going to someone else's house, and then we can also see reservations on a list that are upcoming for the guests that are going to come stay with us. So the first thing we want to do is kind of get the data on the page. So if we jump into reservations controller, in the index, we're going to have two lists of things. The first is going to be a list of reservations, and current user.reservations right now includes all of the reservations where we are going to be a guest. So has many reservations where the foreign key is the guest ID. So if we jump over to the reservation model, you'll notice that a reservation belongs to a guest. And because we're using the guest ID here, it's a little bit more sort of, it tells you a bit more about the context of what that ID refers to. Instead of just saying user here, we want to say guest ID so that we're really clear about what role that guest is playing on this reservation. Because on a reservation, we actually have two things. We have a guest and we have a host. Because we want to be explicit about the type of role for the user on this object, we also need to specify the class name, because the class name is different from the name of the association. If we had a class called guest, then we wouldn't have to specify the class name, but because user is the type that we want to return when someone calls reservation.guest, we have to specify the class name here. Now you'll notice that the reservation right now doesn't actually have a host. We're not tracking the ID of the host on the reservation. Instead, we're tracking the listing, and a listing belongs to a host. And so what we want to do now is somehow associate a reservation with a host. And so what we can do is we can say that a reservation has one host through the listing model. Well, if we jump to the listing model, and we can verify here that we actually do belong to a host. And so what that does is that buys us a new association type on the reservation where we can now call .host, and that will find the user object through the related listing of the reservation. ActiveRecord is super nice and does all of this for us. So if we jump into Rails console and we say like u is user dot, or like, I don't know, r is reservation dot last, then we can say r dot host is this user. So that is the user. And we can say r.guest is another user. So the host is wave at cjavdev, the guest is wave plus guest at cjavdev, but you kind of get the idea. So now we have that two-way association on the reservation object itself. So we can go back to the reservations controller. That's the first type of reservation. Let's head into the reservations index and build this out. So in the first header, I think we want to say something like your upcoming trips or something. And by default, this will be a table of all the trips for this user. Now, TailwindUI just released a bunch of new tables, which are pretty cool. So I thought we would just grab one of those and use that as our table view for our list of upcoming reservations. So I'm just going to grab the HTML for this. There's actually quite a bit here, but we'll figure it out. Okay, so it looks like at the top, let's see. So users, I think we want that to be your upcoming trips. Your upcoming trips. And then a list of all the users in your account. Okay, I don't actually think we need that p tag. And then we don't need a button. And we'll just remove this thing. I know, it's just gonna be like a really basic UI. And then for each row in the table, we wanna iterate over at reservations.each do reservation. And we're gonna spit out these rows, keeping it super scrappy, just using ERB to print out stuff. So we have this logged in user, this authenticated user has two trips that are upcoming. We have no idea what they are because right now we're just plopping in some default text from the copy. All right, so what I think we want to do is print out where we're going. That's like really important. So let's say reservation.listing.title. We refresh the page. So we're going to a listing called Find Me on the Map in California. And this is going to be, let's make this a link to that place. So we're going to say reservation path reservation. And now we can click on these and it'll bring us to the reservation detail page. And then in terms of the, let's see, what else might we want to care about here? We definitely want some sort of like check-in and checkout date. So we can print out the reservation.start date. And maybe we also print out the reservation end date. Okay, reservation.end date. And that'll give us a start and end date. Maybe we also want to know like the status of the reservation, because it could be pending or booked or whatever. So reservation.status. And okay, maybe this edit link is actually just going to be like another link that lets you view the listing. So reservation path for the reservation, that's what we'll make the link tag go to, and we'll just say view. And this is looking pretty good. We need to change our headers here. So this is going to be like listing, and then like check in and check out, and the status. And then for now, yeah, we'll say that this is just to view. Okay, so now we have our listing, we have a check-in, we have a checkout, we have a view button. When we click on it, we see the reservation. All of that is looking really good, and I'm happy with this. That is our upcoming trips. Now let's talk about the trips where we're going to host someone else. That's going to be a different table. So what I think we want to do is grab, because it might be different data, I'm actually just going to copy and paste this for now. And this might seem kind of crazy and it's not dry and whatever, but it actually makes it a lot easier if we want to customize like your hosted trips or something. Or like your upcoming, or like you are hosting these guests. You are hosting these guests or something. I don't know. And instead of reservations, instead of iterating over reservations here, we want to iterate over host reservations. That's going to be another collection that we create inside of the reservations controller. Host reservations is going to be current user.host reservations. Now, the current user doesn't actually have this association, so this is going to crash and burn right here. But what we want to do is somehow figure out what are all of the reservations where we are going to be the host. So if we go look at the user model again, we want to have some association called like has many host reservations. Now, because the name of the association is not reservation, we need to specify the class name as reservation. And because a reservation does not directly relate back to a user, so recall that a reservation, the reservation isn't directly related back to a host, it's through another association. What we want to do is actually say that we have many host reservations through listings, because a listing should have many reservations. So a listing has many reservations. All right, so then back over here, we should be able to say through listings. Now, the problem with this is that, yeah, and GitHub Copilot is already telling us what we need to do, and that is add this, well, actually, let's just do it. So we have to say source reservations, because if we look at that listing model again, the listing model doesn't have any associations called host reservations, exactly. So instead, what we need to do is specify which named association on the listing model we're going through that we want to use that should return reservation classes when we call host reservations. All right, so let's take a look. So if we refresh this page, now we have some, you're hosting these guests. So this is like who we're going to host. And right now we actually don't even have any. So if we go back to the reservation index here, we can just hide this entire thing if, like, I don't know, if there's host reservations.empty, only show this if the host reservations are not empty. Okay, that's I don't know, that's pretty good. And now we'll only see these reservations. Okay, so that is, I don't know, I'm pretty happy with that. Let's log out and then log back in as another user that does have hosted reservations. So wave at cjab.dev. And if we go to the reservations view, this is all of our upcoming trips. We have a lot with this test user, and we also have a bunch that we are hosting. So we are hosting these two with that other guest that's upcoming. So one thing that might be nice is for the trips that we're hosting for guests, we want to know the listing, but we also want to know the guest. So let's add another thing here that has the guest name. And I think we might eventually have like a guest path or something like that to see the details of the guest. So sometimes we'll see, you know, like, is their identity verified and do they have all of the right stuff that they're supposed to have in order to come visit? So what does a guest have? What does a user have? A user should have an email at least, right? So reservation.guest.email. So r.guest.email. Okay, did I hide something here? What's going on? Reservation.guest.email. It's printed out. Okay, let's see here. So this is going to be guest. There it goes. I don't know what's going on with that. Okay, so now we have this guest view that has who's coming, at least their email address. We don't collect the name of the guest yet right now, but we will eventually. So now we're able to see the email of the guest, when they're coming, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We could probably put like a gravatar image of the guest or whatever, but for now this is fine. And right, so when it's a hosted reservation, we need to be able to see the detail view, and the role is going to be a little bit different. When we're a host, we might have buttons like cancel the reservation or modify or send a discount or things like that. Whereas if you're a guest, you're just going to see like, you'll just see sort of like the message view. How do I check in? And what are the, codes and stuff like that. So we probably want a completely different view. So like host reservations with that ID. So why don't we just quickly make that? So Rails G controller host reservations, and that's going to have a show page. And then we can jump into our routes and make sure that we have our host, we'll say host resources, reservations, and then this is gonna like only show for now. Host reservations controller, and here we'll say like at reservation is equal to current user.host reservations.find params ID, and we should see something here. Okay, so then the host reservation show, we'll just copy what we have in reservations show for now. Reservation show. Oops. And cool. So now we have the listing, we have a little bit of information. We probably also want like, H3, I don't know, reservation.guest.email, etc. Okay, so now we can see who's coming and where they're coming. If we want to dig into the JSON, we can see the start date, end date, etc. But now we can go back to reservations. We can look at where we're going, or we can look at people who are coming to visit us. And let's see, can find reservations. Oh, right. Okay, so now we need to go back to our reservations index. And the ones down here, we want these to be host reservation path so that we're linking to the right view for those. So if we go back to the list of reservations and click on one down here, it should, brings us to the host reservation namespace. Cool. All right. That is a fun little breakdown using Tailwind CSS, Tailwind UI Tables, doing a little bit of ActiveRecord stuff. In the next episode, we will talk about messaging. I think we're going to build out some two-way messaging where we can kind of chat between the host and the guest, and that should be pretty fun. So we will leave it at that. Thanks so much for watching, and yeah, we'll see you in the next one.